Hey, what's up? It's the Merc here from Poolshed Games, and it's time for another episode of The Shipyard. This time around, I have covered all the cruiser options that I have for my Covenant of Antarctica. So, I think the only ones that I don't have are the Cleomedes, which are the new, heavy cruisers. They come in the new starter, the new fleet box. Kind of took the place of the Platos as a line cruiser of ours. So once I get those, if I get those, I will do a video talking about those. But now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to move on to talking about some of our big boys. I already covered the Dreadnought because it was how I opened the series. I felt the need to use it because it was, big, impressive model. So the next ship I want to talk about is the Aristotle. It's our battleship, and personally, it's one of my favorite battleships in the three fleets that I have. I like it better than the Borodino for my Russians, just because it has more of a range game. Don't get me wrong, the Borodino's a bruiser up close, but the Aristotle lets you, keep the enemy occupied as you're getting there. And I like it better than the Independence and the Liberty for the FSA, because our new heavy battleship in the FSA, I feel, kind of outstrips the old battleship that we had that was the previous go-to battleship. So then it has a particle accelerator on it, and I love particle accelerators. So without further ado, we'll, like I like to do here, we'll show off the model. Again, apologies that she's not painted. If you've been keeping up on the dry dock series, you'll know that currently in the painting desk, well, on the painting shelf, are my FSA. So they will be finished before these guys are. I don't like to work on two projects at once. I'm just weird like that. Now, you'll notice that this is a thing. The top part of the ship comes off. And that is because it has one very neat ability that I believe is unique to the Covenant. I don't think any other fleets currently have the ability, which is wave lurking. So I guess I'll start off talking about that a little bit. Some ships in the Covenant fleet have an identity crisis. They don't know if they want to be regular ships or submarines, so they're kind of halfway in between, in the middle. And they have the rule called wave lurking, which during the game, you have your battleship, and it's hanging out, and you decide you want to wave lurk. There is a clear plastic template. You take this off, you set this inside the template, designates that the ship is wave lurking. Now, when it waves lurks, you get a bunch of bonuses. You get aerial and surface models are at -1 to hit it, so they hit on 5s and 6s, which is great because it's your battleship. It counts as a small model for the purposes of line of sight, so it's easier to get partially obscured. You hit submerged models with your particle accelerator and torpedoes as if you were a submerged model. And there are some disadvantages, namely that you can't use. Well, you can use. You have guns that are two lists. You have raised guns and lower guns. When you wave lurk, the raised guns fire as normal. They need 4, 5s, and 6s to hit if you're firing at another big ship, or 5s and 6s on small targets or elusive targets. But if you're wave lurking, the lower guns, be they turrets, broadsides, primary, secondary, all count as partially obscured, so they all need 5s and 6s to hit, to represent that they're partially underwater. So it's the downside, it's the trade-off. It's not a big deal because the really nice thing is you can make a swift maneuver with wave lurking ships, where at the end of your, I want to say activation, I might be wrong in the order of sequence here, you roll a die. And since it's a large ship, you need a 6 or a 5 or 6, and it can go into wave lurk, so you can shoot and then wave lurk, which is nice. Aside from that, that is wave lurking. Not a lot of ships in the Covenant army have it, but enough do that it's one of the things that the Covenant can bring to the table, just not in mass. Now, let's talk about the ship just in general. So we'll take a look at the stats. It's a straight 200 points for the battleship, without giving it any upgrades. And that gets you advanced engines, which means if you move straight ahead, it gets an extra 2 inches, so it can go 8 inches a turn. And inventive scientists, so you can re-roll one of your generator dice, but if you roll a 1, you take damage. I want to say you get a fire. It has an internal Shield 2 generator. You can upgrade it to either give it an internal target painter for primary weapons, which is a 12-inch range generator, or you can get an internal disruption generator, which has an 8-inch range. The target painter is 10 points, the disruption generator is 5. The thing for me is, because it has a particle accelerator, I don't see a reason to ever take one of those generators with this. Because you can't use a generator the same turn you fire the particle accelerator. And 9 times out of 10, I find I want to fire that particle accelerator. Granted, it's a fixed 4 weapon, but it's in the front of your ship, so it's not the hardest thing to keep lined up on the enemy and to keep firing. So that's its stats. I mean, not its stats, but that's kind of what you get for 200 points. It's a DR6, critical rating 10, so it's about normal for a battleship. Like I said, it moves 6 inches normally, but if you don't turn, it goes 8. Has 8 hull points, 6 assault points, so it's not like it's not as hefty as, say, a Prussian or a Russian battleship, but they're designed for boarding. It has a decent complement of Marines to protect it from smaller ships, but I would say against a boarding heavy army like, say, the Prussians, you're going to want to have some escorts or something there to help you fight off boarding parties. It has a respectable amount of AA, which is 7 dice, so if you throw a cap on there, you're going to be pretty well protected from boarding, other tiny flyers, things like that. It has 4 concussion charges, which isn't bad, and its RAM rating is 6, or impact rating is 6. It's funny because back when Uncharted Seas was still a game, IR meant Iron RAM. But anyway, it also, its minimum move is 2 inches, so it has to move 2 inches forward every turn unless you go into low speed maneuver. It has a large turning template, obviously, it's a large ship. It doesn't have a turn limit, so it can, after it moves 2 inches, it can turn. It doesn't have to turn a little bit, go another bit, and turn, like that. Squadron size is 1. So, like many of the ships in the COA fleet, it has the option to take energy turrets. And you guys can see here that I went with regular gunnery. I find more and more that I go with regular gunnery on a lot of my Covenant ships because I like to get in close, and the closer you get, the more dice you get to throw at the enemy. So that's my big upside to gunnery. That, and they do have Sturginium rounds, which means if you hit an opponent who has shields, and I play against a lot of Brits, the Prussians who get shields, the exploding dice mechanic is taken away, so you don't get to re-roll a 6. It only counts as 2 hits. It's not a huge deal, but it can make the difference between keeping a crit and losing a crit. So let's just talk a little bit about the turrets, what kind of dice they bring to the table. The raised main and lower turrets are the same. The only reason they're differentiated on the stat sheet is because of wave lurking. You get 9, 7, 5, and 3, and it has 4 of these. So if you can line up a broadside with your turrets, or any shot where you can get 3 or 4 of your turrets to bear, you're going to do a decent amount of damage. Its broadsides are 10, 8, 6, and 4. So it's decent broadsides, especially at like range bands 1 and 2. And the reason I love this ship, the reason I like many of the Covenant ships, is it has the particle accelerator, which is essentially a 1-inch wide template that goes out to the maximum range band that it's listed in. So for the Aristotle, it goes out to range band 3. So that's 24 inches. It's a 1 inch wide, 24 inch long template. And anything under the template is hit. And it's a 995. So in range band 1, ships that are hit get a 9 dice hit. 2, they get a 9 dice hit. And in range band 3, they get a 5 dice hit. So it's really good, I found, for clearing out smalls, doing damage to mediums, and even you can get a lucky hit on a large ship. So that's kind of the stats, the nuts and bolts of the ship. As you can see, it has decent gunnery. It has some neat tricks with wave lurking. It brings a particle accelerator to the table. And like a lot of the COA ships, it's a bit resilient because it has a decent CR and DR, has decent hull points, but the big thing is it has shield generator with inventive scientists, and if it's the Commodore or it's within the Commodore's range, you can overload the generators, which makes a die one better or one worse than you rolled. So you have the potential in a turn, when you roll your 2 shield dice, if one's a 6, and say you roll a 5 on the other, you can use overload the generators, which is the Commodore ability, and make them both 6s. It counts as an exploding 6, so you get 4 shield hits, and you can reroll both of them. It's a very resilient ship. Now, I guess I will mention, just because I don't use them, some people might be interested, the energy turrets are 5 dice at every range band. So, at range bands 4 and 3, you're getting better firepower, and at range bands 1 and 2, it's less firepower than if you had the primary gunnery turrets. Now, the other nice thing about the energy turrets is they are redoubtable. So taking damage doesn't hurt you as much in your damage output as it does with the primary gunnery. I have not found redoubtable energy turrets to be a big enough upside to give up the bigger amount of dice that I get at range bands 1 and 2. Because I use my Aristotle a lot of times if I'm playing a game with either the Euclid or the Prometheus, both of our dreadnoughts. If I'm using one of those, I tend to put my Aristotle on the other flank, and I use it as the hammer on that flank to kind of coincide with my dreadnought. I don't want it sitting back and sniping. I want it to get in there and do some damage. So that's why I give it the primary gunnery turrets. If your fleet is focused more on kind of sniping, or you need a sniping support ship, by all means, the energy turrets might be the better option for you. So, to talk a little bit about if you're playing Covenant of Antarctica, I mean, you should have one of these in your fleet. Unless for some reason you're running like a dreadnought and you don't need a battleship or something along those lines. But if you want a battleship, you want just a standard, ship of the line to anchor your fleet to be your Commodore's vessel. I like this ship. It's a nice ship, and it's only 200 points if you don't give it any generators. Brings a particle accelerator to the table. Has the wave lurking option to make it even more survivable with its shields. Good gunnery. Decent enough amounts of AA and AP to protect it from boarding and tiny flyer attacks. Granted, if you're going to do like me and look to get it in there to mix it up a little bit, you're probably going to want to bring some escorts or a cap along just to give it a little extra protection. If you see this across the table from you, depending on what kind of fleet you're playing, there's a couple things you can do. First of all, the particle accelerator is one of its big toys. And if you can manage to get around it where they can't bring that particle accelerator to bear, you've mitigated a large amount of damage that this ship can do. Another thing is, if it wave lurks and you have anything with Hunter submerged, that affects wave lurked models. Which can, it takes away the advantage of being able to wave lurk to an extent. Also, if you are playing a boarding-heavy fleet like the Prussians or the Russians, and I guess the Chinese are rather boarding-heavy, you can swarm it. I mean, if you can get some criticals in the beginning of the game where you knock down its AP, or you strip away its escorts or its cap, you can board it and prize it, because like I said, it only has 6 assault points, which isn't huge. Just like everything in the game, it's not an insurmountable model that you can't deal with. It has weaknesses, it has strengths. Personally, like I said, I really like it. It's one of my favorite ships. Looking forward to painting it. It's a very versatile all-around ship. You can kit it out either to be sniping or to be a frontline kind of brawler, depending on your playstyle. I think that's very true of a lot of the Covenant of Antarctica ships. But that's going to do it for us here for the Shipyard, talking about the Covenant of Antarctica Aristotle battleship. Hope you guys liked the video. Hopefully you're liking this series. You're finding it maybe helpful or at least educational a little bit on some of the ships in the game, at least for the Covenant. Once I get through the Covenant ships, I'll probably do either my FSA or my Russians. It depends on if I have the FSA fully painted or not. But that's it for us tonight. Hopefully you guys liked the video. If you did, leave us a comment, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time here at Poolshed Games.